Lucas Ramirez grew up in one of the narrow, crowded alleys of Manila where life moved fast, but dreams moved slowly. The houses stood shoulder to shoulder, built from thin wood and rusted metal sheets. Children played in the streets, vendors shouted prices, and motorbikes roared through the maze of pathways. Everything was loud, chaotic, and restless. But inside one small room, there was a different world, quiet, tender, and filled with a voice from the past. In the corner sat an old radio, cracked on the edges, the color faded by heat and time. It had belonged to Lucas's father, a man who used to play Elvis songs late into the night. After his father passed away, the radio became the most precious thing left behind. Even though the sound was imperfect, crackling, static-filled, trembling around the edges, it still carried a warmth that felt alive. Every evening, Lucas sat beside it, listening to Elvis's voice spill into the dim light of their home. His eyes would close gently, and his breathing would slow, as if the music stitched together all the broken pieces inside him. He didn't sing loudly at first. His voice was soft, unsure, almost afraid of being heard. But as days turned into months, the songs became his safe place, a bridge to the father he could no longer touch. Outside their door, neighbors often paused. They heard the boy's gentle humming growing stronger, deeper, filled with emotion far beyond his age. Some smiled. Others whispered about the child with the bold soul voice. For Lucas, singing wasn't about talent. It wasn't about applause. It was simply the only way he knew to keep love alive. And while the world moved on outside, unaware of the quiet miracle growing in that little room, something extraordinary was unfolding, note by note, breath by breath. A voice was being born. A voice that would one day travel far beyond the alleys of Manila. All the way to a stage he never imagined. Life in Lucas's neighborhood continued in the same rhythm, morning noise, afternoon heat, evening music. But the world has its way of noticing beauty when it least expects to. And sometimes, miracles arrive quietly, disguised as ordinary moments. One humid afternoon, a small community event took place near the basketball court. People gathered to share food, laugh together, and hear local kids perform. Lucas was invited to sing, not as a competition entry, but because everyone in the neighborhood found comfort in his voice. He stepped onto the makeshift stage, holding the old radio as if it were a part of him. The sound system was simple, the crowd small, but he didn't mind. He closed his eyes, breathed deep, and let Elvis flow from his heart like it always did. Among the small crowd stood a man who didn't quite blend in. An Irish tourist named Sean, backpack slung over one shoulder, his camera hanging from his neck. He had been walking through the neighborhood when he heard the unmistakable tone of a voice that didn't belong to a child, but to something rare. Something pure. He lifted his phone and began recording. Lucas didn't know. He didn't perform for cameras. He didn't imagine anyone watching beyond the familiar faces he saw every day. When the song ended, the applause was gentle but warm. Lucas bowed shyly, unaware his life had just changed. That night, in a small hotel room, Sean uploaded the video with a simple caption. "This Filipino kid sounds like Elvis, but with even more heart." Within hours, comments poured in. Within a day, it hit Ireland's trending page. Within a week, producers from Ireland's Got Talent reached out. Maria stared at the email for a long time, heart racing, unable to believe what she was seeing. She had never imagined anyone outside Manila would hear her son, let alone a whole country across the ocean. But the world had listened. And the world wanted more. What began as a quiet song in a crowded alley had become the doorway to a destiny waiting far from home. The morning of their flight arrived with a mixture of excitement and quiet fear. Manila was just waking up, jeepneys rumbling through the streets, street vendors preparing their stalls, the sky still painted in soft gray. But inside their small room, everything felt different. Everything felt heavier. Everything felt bigger. Lucas packed his clothes carefully, folding each shirt as if it were something fragile. His mother helped him gently, hiding her trembling hands, trying to stay strong. She knew this opportunity might never come again. She had borrowed money, asked favors, and worked extra shifts just to make this journey possible. The airport was overwhelming. Bright lights. Endless lines. Voices echoing in languages they didn't understand. But through it all, Lucas held his mother's hand tightly, grounding himself in her familiar warmth. When they finally boarded the plane, the world outside the window seemed unreal. Clouds drifted softly beneath them, stretching like fields of white. For a moment, the boy forgot his fear and simply watched the sky in silence. It was the highest he had ever been, literally and in life. Maria glanced at him from time to time, her heart swelling with pride. She remembered the nights when he used to cry quietly, missing his father. She remembered the way he clung to music as if it were a lifeline. And now, here he was, traveling across the world because of that same voice. When they arrived in Dublin, cold air wrapped around them like a new beginning. Everything looked different, the buildings, the streets, the faces. Yet beneath the unfamiliarity, there was a sense of hope growing inside them. Backstage at Ireland's Got Talent, the world felt larger than ever. Performers rushed around, staff shouted directions, cameras flashed. But Lucas stayed silent, clutching the old radio he carried everywhere, even though it no longer played music. It wasn't about sound. It was about memories. It was about courage. As he waited for his turn, the trembling in his chest slowed. Something inside him whispered that he didn't come this far for nothing. This stage, this moment, was waiting for him. The moment Lucas stepped onto the stage, the world felt impossibly large. Lights glowed from every corner, bright enough to blur the edges of the audience. The massive theater seemed to breathe, alive with whispers, anticipation, and curiosity. He stood at the center, small and quiet, his feet sinking softly into the stage floor. His hands trembled for a moment before he gently held them together, grounding himself. The old radio remained backstage, but the memory of its faded melodies stayed close to his heart. Thousands of eyes rested on him. Some waiting. Some doubting. Some hoping for a surprise. On the judges' panel, Aidan Doyle leaned forward with curiosity. Lucas reminded him of someone he used to see in small Irish pubs, young singers carrying more emotion than experience. But there was something different here. Something deeper. Something heavier. The music director signaled the cue. The lights dimmed. The stage fell into a soft hush. In that brief silence, Lucas closed his eyes and breathed in. He wasn't in Ireland anymore. He wasn't standing before thousands. He was back home, sitting on the wooden floor of his room, listening to Elvis crackle through the old radio. He felt his father's presence, soft, warm, and comforting. Then the first note of the instrumental filled the air. It echoed through the theater like a memory returning after years of silence. Soft. Slow. Nostalgic. Lucas began to sing. The first sound was almost fragile, as if he were testing the space around him. But then, slowly, steadily, the voice grew. It deepened. It warmed. It unfolded like a story long buried. A wave of emotion washed across the theater. Audience members leaned forward, their expressions shifting from curiosity to disbelief. The judges' faces softened, their eyes fixed on the boy whose voice felt too old for his age, too real, too soulful, too filled with something unexplainable. Aidan's heart tightened. He felt something he hadn't felt in years, a connection to music that touched the spirit rather than the ears. By the time Lucas reached the middle of the song, the theater had fallen into a spell. No one moved. No one whispered. No one even breathed too loudly. It felt like the world had stopped. Just to listen to him. The final note left Lucas's lips like a quiet prayer carried into the vastness of the theater. For a moment, there was nothing, no applause, no reactions, no movement. Just silence. A deep, sacred silence. It was the kind of silence that happens only when something extraordinary has touched a room, something too beautiful for words. The audience sat frozen, as if afraid that even a breath might break the fragile magic still lingering in the air. Then, like a wave crashing against a quiet shore, the theater exploded with applause. Chairs scraped. Hands clapped. People rose from their seats, overwhelmed by the emotion they had just witnessed. Some had tears in their eyes, realizing they had heard not just a voice, but a story, one carried by loss, love, and unbreakable resilience. Backstage, Maria clutched her chest. She had spent years hiding her tears, but in this moment she could no longer hold them back. Everything she had fought for, sacrificed for, prayed for, was unfolding right before her eyes. On the judges' panel, Aidan Doyle sat completely still. He had seen many performers, technical singers, powerful voices, strong entertainers. But this felt different. This felt like a boy opening his soul and sharing everything inside it, without fear or expectation. He stood slowly, almost as if guided by something beyond himself. The audience sensed something coming. A breathless hush fell again. And then he pressed the golden buzzer. The impact echoed through the theater like a thunderclap. A burst of golden confetti exploded from above, shimmering under the lights, drifting toward the stage like falling stars. Lucas's knees weakened. His hands covered his face. His body trembled, not from fear, but from a flood of emotions too big for such a small frame. Maria rushed onto the stage and wrapped her arms around him as the golden rain continued to fall. The audience watched with softened hearts, witnessing a mother's pride and a child's dream colliding in a moment that felt almost sacred. Aidan looked at them with a gentle awe, knowing he hadn't just rewarded a performance, he had honored a journey. And as golden confetti settled across the stage floor, the truth felt clear and undeniable. A legend had just been born.